Chapter 8. The Skittering. The interior of the estate's mansion was even more extravagant than I'd expected. Marble pillars stretched toward vaulted ceilings painted with imperial murals. Griffin riders piercing black clouds in the long dark. Laumaean gods smiting Demora. That kind of rubbish. Crystal chandeliers hung like frozen constellations, casting fractured lights towards a grand hall in the distance, where nobles in silks and jewels murmured behind golden goblets. The air was cloying with the scent of roses and incense, so thick it made my head spin. I didn't linger. The cart creaked loudly in the otherwise hushed entryway as I followed the directions Glotha had given me. Ash-elven servants in muted uniforms bustled past, their gazes fixed downward, their movements efficient but devoid of urgency. A few spared me a glance, but not long enough to question why someone like me was here. Good. The less attention, the better. The route to the basement was tucked away at the end of a dimly lit side hall. I turned the cart toward the narrow staircase, plunging into the shadows, and stopped dead. The stairs weren't just steep. They were narrow, uneven, and, worst of all, completely impossible for the cart. I stared at them for a moment, feeling the weight of the crate pressing down on me, even though it was still on the cart. My hands tightened on the handle, my jaw clenched. There was no way around it. The cart wouldn't work here. I'd have to carry it. Fucking brilliant, I muttered, leaning against the wall for a moment as if that would somehow make the prospect less miserable. With a deep breath, I unstrapped the crate and eased it off the cart. The weight hit me like a sledgehammer, and I almost dropped it right there. But I managed to hold on, steadying myself. Stairs were bad enough on a normal day. Adding a crate full of weaponry made them a bloody nightmare. I propped the crate on the step above me, standing on the one below, and braced myself. Slowly, carefully, I let its weight sink down to my level, shifting it inch by inch while balancing its bulk so it wouldn't topple over. My knees screamed in protest, my arms trembled with the effort, and my back threatened to give out with every step. Inside, I heard the hungry little horrors I'd poured inside the crate scurrying around among the weapons. Halfway down the stairwell, I stopped, resting the crate on a step and leaning against the wall, sweat pouring down my face. My hands shook so badly I almost dropped it when I started again, but somehow I kept going. By the time I reached the bottom, my entire body felt like it was held together by spite and string. I set the crate down with a grunt, leaning against the wall and dragging in a few shaky breaths. My legs were trembling, my back was screaming, and my hands felt like they'd been carved from stone. But I'd made it, somehow, though I wasn't sure if that was a victory or just proof that I wasn't smart enough to quit. The basement was a stark contrast to the grandiosity above. Low ceilings, damp walls, and the stench of decay greeted me. Rows of crates and barrels were stacked haphazardly along the walls, their labels faded or peeled away entirely. Following Glotha's instructions, I set the crate on the floor in the middle of the room. The floor creaked ominously under the weight as I set it down with a grunt. The crate sat quietly now. The faint clicks and scrapes of its skittering occupants were barely audible over the ambient groans of the old wood and stone around me. I crouched next to it, checking the seals one last time to make sure nothing would escape prematurely. "Stay fucking quiet in there," I muttered under my breath. Satisfied, I straightened and limped toward a dark alcove near the far wall. partially obscured by a leaning stack of barrels. It wasn't perfect, but it would do. Easing myself into the shadows, I sank against the cold stone wall. My legs burned, my back throbbed, and my head pounded, but there was no time to dwell on any of it. Now all that was left was to wait. The basement was silent for a long time, the kind of silence that burrowed into your bones and made you acutely aware of every creak, drip, and shift around you. I stayed in my hiding spot, the cold stone pressing against my back, my gaze locked on the crate, my nerves prickled with the anticipation of what was to come. Then came the footsteps. They were faint at first, but they grew louder as they descended the staircase. 20 of them, their movements careful. The dim light from the lantern caught on their figures as they emerged. Servants' uniforms, plain tunics and aprons. But their cautious movements betrayed them. These weren't servants. At the front of the group was Glotha. Her sharp eyes swept the room, her steps steady as she led her rebels.
"There it is,"
she said, pointing to the crate.
"Looks like Arisith didn't betray us. The weapons should be inside. Take what you can carry, quickly and quietly. Once we're armed, we head upstairs to the gala. Stick to the plan."
The rebels nodded, though their movements were jerky, hesitant. Fear clung to them like a second skin, but they obeyed without question. I shifted slightly in the shadows, watching as one of them, a lanky young Hanseer with trembling hands, reached for the latch on the crate. The wood groaned as he opened it, revealing the false bottom lined with coins beneath the lid. He hesitated for a moment before carefully lifting the false bottom away. There was a moment of complete silence. Then came the skittering.